Senator Champion.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, thank you for considering House File 28. House File 28 is affectionately known as Restore the Vote. Members, as you probably know, that right now in the state of Minnesota, under Minnesota Statute 609.165, that an individual has to complete probation before their right to vote has been restored. Members, we understand that Minnesota has long probationary sentences, sometimes 10 years, sometimes 15 years, sometimes 20 years, whatever that number is. But we know that in the state of Minnesota right now, we have more than 55,000 of our friends, our neighbors, and family members who are not allowed to vote. They should have the right to vote. What House File 28 does, it says that if a person is not incarcerated and if they're living in our communities, they should have the right to vote. Remember, members, the individuals living in our community, there's already been a decision made by the courts and others where they should be. They are safe, they are paying taxes, they're raising families, and they are doing everything that they need to do in order to be in our communities. Members, it's also clear from all the empirical data that when individuals are connected to their communities and participating in pro-social activities, recidivism goes down and the decision to do something to reoffend goes down as well. Members, it shouldn't be that these individuals or individuals living in our communities not have the right to vote. Members, this is not a metropolitan bill. This is a Minnesota bill. I've left on your desk, as you probably have, a number of letters, but also a map is very important. And that map, you will see that it shows where our friends and family and neighbors live all across Minnesota who are living in our communities on probation. And members, you will see that 36% of that number comes from Hennepin and Ramsey County, and 64% comes from outstate and in rural Minnesota. That's why I've often said this is not just a bill for the metropolitan area. This is a Minnesota bill. Members, when you think in terms of support, we have a wide range of support, and as I mentioned earlier, you have a pack of letters that are all stapled together. And the reason why I asked staff to staple it all together is because, guess what? It's so many letters. In that packet, you will see a letter from the state of Minnesota, the Office of the Secretary of State, the Office of the Minnesota Attorney General, NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Health, the NAACP, Minnesota Second Chance Coalition, the Minnesota Nurses Association, Minnesota AFL-CIO, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, the League of Minnesota Cities, Association of Minnesota Counties, and Minnesota Association of County Officers, the ACLU of Minnesota, Let People Vote, African American Leadership Forum, Common Cause Minnesota, Alpha Emergence Behavioral Health, Take Action Minnesota, the State of Minnesota Board of Public Defenders, Minnesota Association of Community Corrections Act Counties. That is probation officers, just in case you don't know who they are. The City of Minneapolis, the Minnesota Catholic Conference, Luena, Minnesota and North Dakota, the Minnesota Department of Corrections. We even had in our committee testimony from the commissioner. Minnesota Freedom Fund, MNCASA, which is the Minnesota Association Against Sexual Assault, who represents thousands of victims who all say, we support an individual's right to vote. I'm not done, members. The Minnesota County Attorneys Association, not just one, county attorneys from all across this state. We Choose Coalition, the League of Women Voters, the Isaiah Coalition, made up of over 85 local pastors and faith leaders, The Restore the Vote Coalition, made up of civic engagement and advocacy organizations, direct service organizations, faith-based organizations, and labor unions. There's also in that packet a coalition letter from the Center for Disabilities Rights Coalition, the Center for Popular Democracy, Common Cause, Free, and others. Also, you will see an article from the Star Tribune, which talks about the importance of this work and how this is important. The Sentencing Project article, and last but certainly not least, a map, as I mentioned earlier, from the Minnesota Justice Center. Members, I ask that you support House File 28 because it is important for us to restore the right to vote. We all agree that voting is important. It is our voice. And we do not want to disenfranchise anyone from voting. Let's do it today. Let's restore their right to vote. And I'll be happy to stand for any questions. Thank you again, members, for your support.